South African city dwellers, frogs in a boiling pot. Well, the CSIR study shows that the heat trapped in inner city areas can increase temperatures between 3 to 10% higher than in outlying areas. Heat waves pose a major threat to urban settlements, and research says that many lives will be lost if we do not act now. So for more on this, I'm joined by senior researcher at the Institute for Security Studies, Alize Le Roux. Alize, thank you so much for your time this evening. I mean, South Africa's growing urban areas have been described as a ticking time bomb. How so?
Yes, hi Faith. I think it's because of the heat absorption characteristics of cities. They are naturally hotter than its surrounding areas, anything from 3 to 10 degrees Celsius. And what is contributing to this heat we're experiencing in cities and will in the next couple of decades is the geographical location of South Africa. We are naturally on a much hotter area. Also, climate change has brought unprecedented temperatures to South Africa, and this will continue as we experience more heat, as we experience increase in very hot days, heat wave events. But it's also the way we are designing our cities. This is contributing to the urban heat island effect that is contributing to these increased temperatures. So the materials we use in our cities, the asphalt, the cement, the steel, these all absorb heat and they are slow to release heat in the evenings. So this contributes to higher temperatures. The darker materials that we use, the lack of vegetation and trees and water bodies in our cities, and also the increased use of air conditioning is all contributing to this increased temperature.
Yeah, I mean, as you're speaking about this, one wonders, when it comes to those that are town planners, for example, are these taken into consideration? Climate change, is it being taken as seriously as it should to avert a situation where we have more fatalities as a result of direct heat exposure?
I think much more needs to be done, and it needs to be done much more urgently as well. This will affect all of us, and specifically those within cities. It's the dependent populations that will be most affected, the young, the elderly. People living in informal settlements are particularly at risk, people in older buildings, poorer communities. And I think when we look at how the government is responding to this, how city planners are responding to this, it really needs to be an all of society, all of sector response. So on a global and country level, we have to bring down carbon emissions very drastically and very quickly. To be able to mitigate this, but we also need to start adapting our cities for what is to come. So cities need to start increasing vegetation coverage. They need to use technology such as cool roofs. They need to change building materials. Passive design and cooling needs to be brought into the design of our buildings, into our homes, our offices, and we need to make people aware of the dangers through early warning systems. And then I think most importantly is cities need to draw up contingency plans. We know this is already happening. This will continue to happen. And cities need to assess the risk, and then they need to start bringing in contingency plans and starting to plan for when this actually happens. What will they do and how will they respond?
Yeah, but why would we find that this phenomena is underreported at this level? I mean, if there are fatalities that occur as a result of this heat, and as you say, climate change is not going away anytime soon unless we can actually address it effectively. So why aren't we seeing as much reporting done about it? What's so difficult about shedding some light in terms of what the numbers are looking like?
So I think it's, like you said, it's vastly underreported on the African continent. In the past 4 decades, I think we've seen about 200 of these events recorded globally. Europe experienced a deadly heat wave in 2003, costing the lives of 72,000 people that were directly attributed to the increased heat. And South Africa has only recorded officially one of those events and only recorded 11 deaths. But we've seen studies emerging from researchers that studies access death related specifically to temperatures, and they are estimating anything from around 1,800 to 1,900 deaths per year that could be directly attributable to death. I think what happens many times when these patients goes to hospital or when the cause of death is recorded, the secondary causes are normally recorded as cause of death, and not the fact that it was a heat stroke or heat exhaustion that was the primary reason for death.
Yeah, and before we let you go, Alize, talk to us a little bit about the most vulnerable cities Just in case my city is one of the most vulnerable, which cities are the most susceptible to this?
I think if we look into the next 3 decades, I think we should be particularly concerned about the cities in the central parts of South Africa, those in Limpopo, Mpumalanga, specifically those in Northwest, the Northern Cape. And then, of course, within these cities, the most vulnerable people would be the people located in informal settlements. It would be the poorer communities that doesn't have a lot of access to green spaces. It would be the dependent population, the elderly, those with comorbidities, the young that's dependent on people to take care of them, to make sure they're rehydrated. So it will affect all of us, but specifically those provinces would be most affected.
We'll leave it there. Alize Le Roux, thank you very much for your time this evening. Senior researcher in African Futures and Innovation at the ISS. Whilst